Sisters and brothers, tomorrow is October the 19th. 30 years ago, on October the 19th, Prime Minister Maurice Bishop of Grenada was assassinated, along with several of the other leaders of the Grenada Revolution. 6 days later, on October the 25th, the United States military invaded Grenada under the command of their President Reagan, their commander-in-chief. And this military invasion, this illegal and immoral invasion of one of the Caribbean's smallest nations, a nation of a little over 100,000 people, smashed an exciting and inspiring experiment in democracy, a popular democracy, a different type of democracy, not a democracy that stressed periodic elections, but rather a democracy that involved the people of the country regularly and consistently. It was a bottom-up model as opposed to a top-down model. A model of democracy that stressed mass engagement. It was a very antithesis of the capitalist model of democracy. It was a democracy of active participation. Some people call it participatory democracy. But it was active participation by the people of the country in the process of nation building. Surely there was a role for the state in this process, and in the case of Grenada, a revolutionary state was able to use the power and the resources of the state to organize and to mobilize the people into mass-based organizations. So you had organizations for women and for youth and for workers and for farmers. And I was a first-hand witness and a participant in this process of participatory democracy in Grenada, of people, ordinary people, becoming active agents as opposed to passive subjects in the transformation of their own country. And I saw and witnessed the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm, the pride in the faces of ordinary Grenadians who were cognizant that their ideas, their recommendations had value, had worth, and would be taken seriously by their leaders and would be incorporated into official development plans. And these mass organizations were mobilized to convene monthly parish councils. And in these parish councils, representatives of the mass organizations would come together to have a dialogue and to interface with leaders of the government and leaders of the party, with ministers of government who would come to report to the people on a monthly basis, not inside of the parliament, but in the villages, in the towns across the country. They would not only have to report on what they have been doing as ministers of government, but also to answer questions from members of those mass organizations, to discuss, to debate, and to plan collectively in the process of development. This was a democratic process of profound transparency, of criticism and self-criticism, of checks and balances. And what this proved was that popular democracy is inextricably linked to national development. Unfortunately, 30 years after this noble experiment in participatory democracy, in democracy for development, in democracy with the people and not for the people, this experiment was stamped out by the US imperialist invasion 30 years ago. Unfortunately, today in the Caribbean region, no such process exists in the same form in Grenada or in any other country. The democratic model that prevails throughout the region today is your top-down parliamentary model, a model dominated by political and economic elites, a model where the masses are allowed to exercise universal suffrage, the right to vote once every 5 years for their parliamentary representatives. This top-down model of democracy is not a model that empowers people. It does not organize people. It does not mobilize people to participate in their own socioeconomic development and nation building. It is the flip. What participatory democracy was trying to do in Grenada was to flip the equation. The traditional equation of democracy equals elections was flipped to democracy equals participation. The baton that fell to the ground 30 years ago with the destruction of the Grenada Revolution has been picked up and is being carried forward, not by the governments of the Caribbean region, but by an array of civil society organizations all across the region. And these civil society organizations are comprised mostly of social justice advocates, environmentalists, feminists. Most of them do not have any formal structural relationships with the elected governments or the state institutions in their respective countries. They operate mostly on the margins of political power. But this does not mean that they are ineffective or impotent. Let me go back and just show you, again, the link between active, engaged democracy and economic growth and development. During the 4.5 years of the very short existence of the Grenada Revolution, this participatory process that I just talked about yielded tangible and very impressive results in terms of economic growth. For each year in the 4.5 years that the revolution was in power, the gross domestic product of Grenada grew by 5.5%, which in the context of the global recession at that time, this is when we're talking about the early 1980s, all right? The global capitalist economy was undergoing one of its recurring crises. They call them recessions, which of course always impacts negatively on the development of countries in the so-called third world. And also in the context of not a single penny in foreign aid came to Grenada from the United States or Britain during that period of time. And some of us argue that these impressive results of 5.5%, I don't know of any Caribbean country today that is registering more than maybe 2 or 3, if that much, annual percentage growth in their GDPs. But this 5.5%, we believe, firmly, was a direct result of an engaged and mobilized people in the economic development of the country. Back to the civil society organizations for a minute. Indeed, they have become the region's watchdogs, advocating for transparency in government, being critical of corruption in government and the public sector generally. These civil society organizations are the ones that are giving voice to the feelings and the frustrations of the people on the ground in each Caribbean country today. And so their role is critical, and I want to lift up their role and pay homage to their work in this symposium. It is of vital importance what they're doing to strengthen democracy and in militating for a role for ordinary folk in the economic development of the region moving forward. And these civil society organizations have formed several region-wide networks. I'd like to cite just two of them, two recent formations, as a matter of fact. One known as the Pan-Caribbean Civil Society Reparations Network, and another organized around a new website. The name of the website is 1804 Carib Voices, and this is supposed to be an electronic region-wide town hall forum. 1804, of course, paying due respects and deference to the year that Haiti won its independence in 1804, and Carib Voices, of course, being the voices of the people. This is an effort that's being led by someone who we had invited to attend this conference, but had a commitment to speak at a conference in Cuba at this very moment, Dr. Norman Govan from Jamaica, one of the Caribbean's leading public intellectuals and an outstanding academic and political economist who for many years was the chief economic advisor to the late Michael Manley of Jamaica. But anyway, Dr. Govan sends his greetings to this symposium and asked me to convey the news about this new website. I'd like to just read an excerpt from its mission statement. It says, quote, "The Caribbean is facing multiple challenges today, arising equally from the impact of global economic and environmental crises, as from the legacy of our history of colonialization, economic dependency, social inequality, and authoritarian governance. It is almost a cliche to say that global crises require strong regional responses. Yet, Caribbean regionalism is in disarray, and political leaders communicate neither a vision nor a clear path out of the present crises. Accountability in governance has become a major issue, and there is widespread popular cynicism with the political process. Political decolonization is an unfinished task, while in many independent states there is disaffection with the fruits of the national project. Civil society organizations all over the Caribbean are agitating and organizing around a variety of social, economic, and governance issues, and 1804 Carib Voices will provide a platform by which such organizations can spread their message regionally, find areas of commonality of ideas and action, and work towards our collective empowerment. And I'll wrap up with another quote from the Pan-Caribbean Civil Society Reparations Network, which was just recently formed in the wake of the CARICOM nations' unanimous resolution to create a region-wide reparations commission, as well as individual island reparation commissions. It says, "Not since the Caribbean struggles for independence has the region embarked on a journey of such magnitude and import for its future development and that of its people." It also goes on at the end to warn. It says, "CARICOM governments and the Secretariat of CARICOM owe it to the people of this region to ensure that discussions on this subject receive the widest possible exposure and promotion. It is urgent that young people of CARICOM countries understand the damages, the economic, the cultural, the social damages meted out to the enslaved peoples of this region. The impact of these damages remain deeply embedded in many of our institutions until today. How about making sure that reparations is taught in every primary school throughout CARICOM? Equally important are the lessons which we need to extract from these experiences about the importance of social justice, inclusion of vulnerable groups rather than their exclusion, respect for and nurturing of our own collective vision, energies, abilities, and talents, respect for each other, regardless of social status, gender, or race, to help new leaders avoid some of the painful mistakes by the leadership over the years. While we must acknowledge the progress that has been made in some areas, we must also admit that the benefits associated with this progress, for the most part, have disproportionately improved the living conditions of a minority, but has not been the lived experiences of the majority of CARICOM's populations. CARICOM governments must know that they will be held accountable for maintaining the momentum, for including the voices of ordinary people in this journey, and for providing the visionary leadership now required. I recommend that we visit the website of 1804 Carry Voices, and also that we track the growth and development of the Pan-Caribbean Civil Society Reparations Network. And finally, as one of the charges that our moderator for this panel gave to all of us was to come up with some concrete recommendations for this symposium to consider. And I'd like to offer a couple of those for your consideration. First one, I'd like to suggest that this symposium undertakes to establish a Pan-African / Pan-Caribbean Reparations Commission right here in the United States, with the primary objective of supporting the growing reparations movement in the Caribbean region. Secondly, we should develop and maintain active channels of communications between this US-based commission and the respective reparations commissions in each of the CARICOM nations. And we should actively support a revitalization of the reparations movement inside the United States and develop a powerful and compelling narrative that links the demands for reparation to the socioeconomic development needs of African Americans, of Native Americans, the two communities that, like their sisters and brothers in the Caribbean, have suffered the most from systematic native genocide, legalized enslavement, and ongoing racist exploitation and oppression. And finally, I would recommend that this symposium send a letter of support for the reparations movements to the Secretariats of CARICOM, the Organization of African Unity, the Organization of American States, the OAS, and the Congressional Black Caucus, and that this symposium goes on record condemning the racist ruling by the Constitutional Court in the Dominican Republic against its Haitian citizens. This is an affront to the entire Caribbean region, to black people in the United States, to black people around the world. And I was happy to see that Prime Minister Gonzalez last evening read a what I thought was an eloquent and powerful letter that he has written to the President of the Dominican Republic, expressing his very grievous concerns over this matter. So I know my time is pretty much up. Thank you, sisters and brothers, for listening.